Welcome to Bald, Bearded, and Bold, the podcast for dads who are embracing fatherhood with confidence, wisdom, and a little bit of humor. Whether you're rocking the bald look, the beard, or just the bold attitude of being a dad, this is your space for real talk, dad hacks, and stories from the trenches of fatherhood. Let's build stronger families and better dads together. Now here's your host, Jason Haswell.
We are here. It is the first of many, we hope, at Bald, Bearded, and Bold. Our podcast begins. It is the genesis of this wonderful idea of single dads and news and all the shit that goes on in the world. And we're here to start things today. With me is Tonto to my Lone Ranger, KJ, my producer.
Glad to be here. Great to be with you. And I'm so excited for this journey because you have some interesting stuff to say.
Well, yes, I think so. But, you know, that's my personal opinion. And I appreciate you for saying that. But, yes, KJ will be with us weekly to discuss topics. And we will have guests to discuss many different things and what it's like to be a single dad in today's world. And we'll throw in some current events and maybe some sports and just some general opinions on how the world's going right now. And do we like it? Do we not? And do we have some answers on how to deal with it is probably the biggest thing. And we hope to provide some advice and counsel for those single dads out there, and even not single dads, just dads in general and single moms and whoever else wants to listen to the stuff we have to say.
So, you know, a big question here. I want the who on has, the why. Why did you decide that podcast is the way I want to go?
Well, I have a rather colorful backstory. I grew up in Marshall County, West Virginia, in Glendale, West Virginia, proud home of former Governor Arch Moore. Go Arch. He's, you know, looking down on us now, but always a big Arch fan. And grew up in Glendale. Pretty normal childhood, great childhood. My parents were divorced when I was younger, but I had a mom and a stepdad and a dad and a stepmom and split household, as many of us, you know, with divorce have dealt with, and all the fun that comes with that. So, but normal childhood, played sports growing up, football and baseball, and went to John Marshall High School, played football and baseball there, then moved on from my beginnings in wonderful Marshall County to Bethany College, where I also played football. And also growing up, I boxed, did some amateur boxing because my grandfathers both fought, my dad fought, so did some amateur boxing on the way up. And when I started to play football in college, I couldn't box anymore, so I started doing some kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. And then as I get a little older and cage fighting and MMA kind of came to fruition, I decided I was going to put all that stuff together, start training a little bit, and did some MMA fighting while I got into my chosen profession, which is I'm the managing director of a wealth management and financial planning firm. Have been a financial advisor for 29 years. In the first really 8-9 of that, I was doing some MMA fighting while I did this. So I was working 70, 80 hours a week at the office, and then I was getting in the gym and kicking the hell out of people and getting the hell kicked out of me while that was all going on. So, you know, that's kind of my colorful background in the early days, so to speak.
And you stayed single throughout this. You dated, or, you know, how's the relationship?
I was married for a very brief time. I got married. I dated a girl in college, and we got married out of college, and I was only married for a year and a half. And then I was single for 20 years. And then I met my wife, who I got married in my 40s, and met the right one. She was an amazing woman. And unfortunately, 2.5 years ago, my wife passed away. My wife had, and we will talk about this in further detail as we go on the show, because this is the main reason why I'm doing the podcast, is I lost my wife she had severe depression, PTSD. She had some issues in her childhood that caused this. And my wife was an alcoholic and had several different issues because of this. And it was a rough go. We dealt with rehab, and we dealt with a couple of times and several other issues. And unfortunately, the demons that my wife had, she succumbed to them with the alcohol and passed away a couple of years back. And so I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I am raising them by myself. As my family is, my parents are gone. Everybody is deceased at this point. So I'm raising them alone, and it's a challenge. And I run my business. We have a thriving financial management practice and a wealth management practice. I have wonderful clients that have been with me for years and years. But I also have my kids, and we're doing sports and activities and all the things that come with a 6 and an 8-year-old. So the reason I did this podcast was because we looked out there, and I looked out there when I had this idea, and there's no podcast really out there for single fathers. And there's nothing out there that really kind of leads them in the right direction and maybe provides some advice and support, because there are days where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So we want to kind of provide that. But in my wife, Dinah, we want to talk about that because I know there's a lot of people out there with spouses who have addiction problems and things that they go through, especially when you have kids. It makes it even more difficult. So we want to provide some kind of a forum to talk about that. So that's. I was going to write a book, and I was like, I don't want to write a book. And it's just nowadays with digital, media and things like that, it's just a better way to get your message out, I think, as a podcast. People can listen to it. It's a little easier. You can provide a little more entertainment value. So that's why we're here.
Well, I realize it's pretty tough to drive and to also read a book at the same time. So, doing a podcast, we get the opportunity. We can tune you on and turn you on in our car, anywhere else, and not wreck. So that's always a bonus.
Yes, I've tried to read while driving, and it doesn't work very well.
No, I wouldn't think so.
No,
I wouldn't think so. So, what do you hope the takeaway is going to be for those who are going to tune in for the next episodes that we're going to have with this podcast?
As Dr. Dre says, the next episode. I would say that what my goal here is to provide advice and counsel to those that, on a daily basis struggle with dealing with aspects of life with their kids. I mean, today's world's so crazy with social media and there's so much. I was raised, I was born in 72. I'll be 53 in May. And I was, I would say I was born probably in the wrong era. I'm more of, my grandfather and my dad especially were very much old school parents. And I think today, I was raised with values. I mean, my grandfather used to slap me in the back of the head if I didn't open doors for women. And, there's certain things you do and you don't do. And you live by a bit of a code and have some honor and try and be a real, as my grandfather always used to say, there's boys and there's men, and we want to be men. And so I think we've lost that. I think there's a lot of that gone in today's world. I don't think we raise kids like that anymore. I think we let kids, I'll use a word that my friends and I use all the time. I think we got a lot of soft people walking around out there these days. And with all that I've been through and everything, I try to put out a message that's positive. And I want people to understand, sometimes you got to depend on yourself, and you got to have that mental toughness and have that intestinal fortitude and have that resilience where, as I tell my kids all the time, if you fail and you get knocked down, you get up and keep moving forward and you'll be fine. But we don't quit, and, we don't give up, and that's how you live your life. And the message I would like the people listening to this is how do I do that? What are some ways that you do it that will help me and where I'm going? And I want people to take away some positivity in their daily life, because we have so much negativity out there. I think I'm trying to bring some humor first and foremost, but a message of just, life is good. Life's a gift, and we're all blessed, every day when we get up. we're blessed to have that day, and let's be positive and try and help others the best way we can. That's what we're here. That's what I'm doing here. That's my main goal.
Hey dads, need a break from the chaos? Whether you're changing diapers, coaching Little League, or just trying to drink your coffee while it's still hot, we've got you covered. Bald, Bearded, Bold is a podcast that talks about the best and worst things about fatherhood and being a dude. Also, we'll have some wild stories by our guests along the way. Whether it's sports, business, family, life in general, or whatever the hell you're talking about that day, you never know, so keep listening in. Now, back to the show.
Hey, we're back here on Bald, Bearded, and Bold, and I am Jason Haswell, host of the podcast. We are here with our beautiful producer, KJ.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And we are talking about, this is our first episode, and we are kind of going over things that the message and kind of my views on things and what our narrative will be and how that affects my daily life and how we can help affect yours through our viewpoint and things I've learned, and hopefully put some knowledge out there for you. So just kind of, a little synopsis on what we're going to be doing weekly here on the podcast.
So, your beliefs, you have strong beliefs, that's great. Fantastic. And the people are going to hear about that. Tell us a little bit about those, who you really are deep inside there.
I mean, like I, had said a little bit before previously was, I'm a little more old school and daily I am shocked and stunned by events in the world and things that I hear, and through my job, I do a ton of research and naturally in the market and things, for the investments we use. But I also watch a lot of political TV because I have to keep abreast as to what is going on politically, because it naturally affects the the economy and economics, and the political situation, of course, has bearing in that as well. So I'm always watching that, and me being an ex-athlete and I look at that situation because that's changed so much here in the last few years. But, kind of what my message is just, I think we've become a bit soft. I think we've, as a society, have become very apologetic for mediocrity. I think we've become very much, I think we champion mediocrity a bit. I think we don't push our kids to be better. I think we kind of accept, we're worried about being friends with our children more than we are being role models and true parents to our kids. And something that my friends and I talk about a lot are, I hear a lot of people talk about, well, I want my son and my daughter to like me, or I want to be friends with them. And my father used to say to me, I'll be your friend when you're 18. My job up until then is to make you a decent human being. And I think we've lost that a bit. I think it's easy to tell kids yes. I think it's hard to parent. And there's a difference between having a kid and parenting them. I think parenting is a job. I think you have to be proactive. I think you have to be involved. And you have to talk to your kids openly and have them be able to talk to you. But I think you also have to tell them when you think they're going in the wrong direction, and not necessarily, pat them on the head and say, oh, that's okay. I think you tell them that's wrong. This is wrong, and here's why. And something that you'll hear on this podcast is something I say to my kids a lot is, what would Jesus do? If Jesus was in that situation, what would he do? What do you think his response would be to that? If a kid called him a name, how would he respond? If you were playing on a field and a kid, trips you or hits you, how would Jesus respond? And, and I think we try and, you're never going to do all the right things because we're never going to be him. And, but we aspire to a certain level of values and a certain level of honor that I don't think we see a lot in today's world.
So, question for you then. So you do want to teach your kid honor and doing what would Jesus do, but you also have the same kind of convictions about, so say he's on the playground and say a bully's just been beating the tar out of him. Is he supposed to sit back and take it? Is he going to think about what would Jesus do? Or do you teach him to slug that kid?
Well, I mean, as my dad used to tell me, I don't want you don't start fights, you finish them. And I am a big believer. I mean, if a kid comes up and is bullying another child, I think first you say, don't do that. Leave me alone, or just, in a way that's positive. But if that child continues to bully you, you need to be able to defend yourself. And I'm a big believer in, some people only get the message one way, and we're going to send it. So, I tell my son all the time, try and walk away and say, hey, just get out of my grill, so to speak. Or I tell my daughter the same thing. But if they stay in your grill, number one, nobody should be able to touch you. If they're laying hands on you, you should be able to defend yourself and lay hands back. But I think today's world, the message is always, walk away and go tell somebody. And the problem with that is when somebody ain't around, you got to be able to defend yourself. And you also got to be able to stick up for yourself. And the right thing isn't always, so as I think a lot of people think the right thing is to walk away and say, I'm the peaceful one. I think the justice is big with me. And justice sometimes is somebody needs to get their ass whipped. And I tell my kids, we try and be the bigger person until it's, there's a movie called Roadhouse. And
which one? First one or second?
Oh, the second one's okay, but the first one, Patrick Swayze, and Sam Elliott. Yeah, come on. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the best. And in that movie, the bouncers ask Dalton, he says, be nice, escort him to the door, help him out. And they said, one of the bouncers says, well, how do we know when not to be nice? He says, you don't. I'll tell you. He said, but we're going to be nice until it's time not to be nice. And I'm a big believer in that. I'll be the nicest guy in the world until you cross a line, and then it's time to end things. And, we'll send our message that we don't start fights, we finish them. So I just think that and the world has just lost their backbone, I think, a lot of times now. We don't see that much anymore. And we're all trying to be all things to all people and make everybody happy. That's never going to happen. That's never going to. And I think we got a movement out there now that's all about putting out a narrative for a very small portion of the population that, I refer to movies a lot because I'm a big movie guy. And as Mr. Spock said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And I think, sometimes we get in a narrative of a very small amount control the whole narrative and the whole message out there. And it isn't necessarily, right or wrong. It's just, you have to look at, what your beliefs are. And you don't infringe on any. I'm a huge believer in liberty and a huge believer in freedom. I think anybody should be able to make a choice for themselves in this country. That's why this country is the greatest country in the world, is because you can make choices to do whatever you choose. And other people should respect that. You might not like it. Like I hate, somebody burning a flag. But do they, under our Constitution and our freedoms, do you have the ability to do that? Yes, you do. And that it should be that way. I hate it. I despise it. But that's freedom. That's liberty. And we are the only country in the world where you can truly do these kinds of things. And we've lost that. I think we've really lost that a lot today, unfortunately.
Yeah, that flag, what people don't understand, I think, is that, go back and look at all of the wars and all of the hundreds of thousands of soldiers who fought for that, and I think that brings you back to it. Well,
and the big thing with me is, we got red stripes, and the blood of our veterans and the blood of our, all the guys that have defended this nation and those freedoms that I'm talking about. They They have their beliefs, but they died and bled so that we can have that liberty to say and do what we choose. And most countries aren't like that. So I think that's huge. That we, number one, we defend those people, and those veterans should be respected and revered. But I also think that you may hate the venom that somebody's putting out. You may hate their speech, but in this country, you should be able to put that speech out. And I think the narrative should not be controlled by one side. It seems that lately the narrative has been controlled by the far right and the far left, both. And I think most people walking around today are more in the middle. I think they believe some of some things and believe some of another, and they're normal, everyday people wanting to feed their families, get through life, go to work, watch a ball game, have a cold beer. And I think we've gotten so out of whack with the things that we're looking at. And I try to tell my kids that, you got to focus. Focus on the good things. Focus on what you can control. If you can't control it, there's no reason to worry about it. Focus and control what you can be in charge of.
Dads, sometimes we're superheroes. Sometimes we're just trying to find our car keys. If you love dad jokes, real talk, and stories about the highs and lows of fatherhood, tune in and subscribe to Bald, Bearded, and Bold. New episodes drop every week. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
We are back. I am Jason Haswell. This is Bald, Bearded, and Bold. We are back here on our first episode. Enjoying the conversation so far. We are here with our lovely and intelligent producer, KJ.
Hi, y'all.
She's here. She's asking me the tough questions. So shoot away, fire away.
So we're going to talk about being a dad.
Yes.
You did not become a dad until a little bit later in life, which is challenging for some and daunting. And you've been through it. So you have a 6 and an 8-year-old, but you do have a daughter. What is that like for you, especially parenting on your own?
Being single for as long as I was, and I'm a man's man, so I did all kinds of manly stuff as I was growing up, and I had a great mother, but she was kind of a boy's mom, and then I have a daughter. And she's 8, she's going on 38, and every day, things she says to me blow me away. And there's some stuff that I don't know what in the living hell to say to her. I mean, for example, a couple things I've been discussing lately, some of the topics at the Haswell estate have been, 1, boobies. And how we are growing some boobies, also known as, apparently, by my assistant Teresa, who has been with me for 23 years at work. She called my kids call her Aunt Titi. Well, she's very helpful with my daughter, and it's because there's some things I don't know what the fuck to say about this. And so she told me that apparently, because I came to work one day and I'm like, my daughter's name is Lena. I said, Lena is getting some boobs, and I don't really know what to do. And Teresa's like, well, we have to get her a training bra and all this, because I don't know how this stuff works. So Teresa says, well, they're not called boobs at that age. They are called buds or blossoms. So I have now been educated in the tiny little bud and blossom category. I knew nothing. The only thing, when somebody said bud to me, I was thinking a cold one and a long neck. I wasn't thinking about my 8-year-old daughter getting boobs. So we have now been through the training bra discussion, and now we are moving into sports bras. And TT helped me with this. She helped me purchase the correct garb, because I have no friggin' idea about boobs, blossoms. I know a little bit about boobs, but I don't know a whole lot about buds and blossoms. So we're working through that. And then the other night, I was sitting in my bedroom. My daughter came in and said, "Papa." My kids call me Papa, both my son and my daughter. And she said, "Papa, what's a period?" And I said, "It's a punctuation at the end of a sentence." And she said, "No, it's not. I'm talking about the one where you bleed." So my son and I are looking at each other, and He's 6. And he said, Papa, what's a period? So I had to tell my daughter in the best way I could, because, I've never had one, what that means. And I said, well, all ladies, all women get a period, and it has to do with your cycle for having babies and things like that. It's perfectly natural. I said, eventually you will start to have periods, and you will have them, every so many weeks, but roughly once a month. And I said, does that help you? And she said, well, yeah, because there was a girl in school that had those things that Mommy used to have in the green package, and she left it on the floor in the bathroom, and it was bloody, so I didn't know what that was. So where do we go from there? And I said, well, yes, that's perfectly natural. I said, please don't make fun of that girl or tease her, because she's going through, when you do it, it'll be you got to get used to that and learn about what you have to do. And there's certain things you have to do for those. And it's going to, and I've never had this conversation before in my life. So these are the daily things that happen to me with my kids. Just like my son said to me, we had dinner the other night and I was eating coleslaw. And my son said to me, I want to try that. So I gave him a bite. He said, that's good. And I said, well, good. I'm glad you like that. Well, the next day he said to me, Papa, can we get some more coleslaw?
Coleslaw.
And I said, what was that, bud? And he said, that coleslaw. I want to get a big bowl of coleslaw. And I said, well, buddy, it's slaw. I said, however, I would prefer you just go ahead and call it coleslaw, because we're at an age with my son where he says some very funny things, and soon that will be gone.
It will be.
So I'm trying to so we are now talking about coleslaw. So, I've heard about buds and blossoms, periods, not the punctuation at the end of a sentence. And now we are having deep discussions about coleslaw with my son. And my son also called fog. The first time he ever saw fog and could speak, he said, Papa, what's all that smoke? Smoke was smoke, and it was fog. So we still, to this day, call everything that revolve around clouds or fog is smoke. So these are just the daily occurrences. But I also hear things, unfortunately, like my son came to me the other day, and we had 2 dogs, Fred and Butler. And I'd have them put down. They were old, 15 and 14. And Butler was like my son. He was a pug, and he was the best dog I've ever had. I love him to death. And my wife passed, and my son came to me the other night, looked me in the eye, and he said, Papa, I miss Mommy and Butler and Fred. I really miss all of them. And then he cried. And that's tough. And I just told him what we always talk about. And this is something a message that if you've lost a spouse or lost anybody, with a kid and they want to know, I tell them all the time, Mommy is with Fred and Butler, and they're in heaven, and they're looking down on us every day, and they're perfectly healthy and happy, and they're with God, and they called my mom Yaya. And they're with Yaya, and they're all happy, and things are good, and they watch us every day. So we want to live our lives to impress them and make sure that we're doing the right thing, so that, because they're watching you. They know what you're doing, and they want you to do well. So I have conversations like that, and they're difficult. They're difficult. I mean, my son was, the week my wife died, my son turned 4. So I worry every day about, will he remember his mother? And I try and talk in a positive way about her with him all the time, and remember things that we did, because I don't want him to forget his mom. I mean, my wife had problems, but inherently she was a good mother and a great wife, and had love for all of us. But she suffered with some demons, and I want my kids to remember her in that way.
I think that's wonderful. But what kind of toll and stress does this take on you? Who's there for you whenever you need to cry or you need to talk about your wife? I mean, where do you turn?
When I first lost my wife, I'll be the first one to admit I went to a counselor and talked to someone. I needed to talk to somebody. I mean, it was very difficult, and I'd been through a lot with her with the drinking and her depression issues and things. So I needed to talk to somebody, and I got some great advice from him that I had never thought about. I look at myself, as bulletproof sometimes, and I can take anything. And I've been through a lot. I lost my dad at 17. Lost all my grandparents early, and that was a tough period in my life when my wife passed, because I lost my mom in 21, I lost my wife in 22, rough couple of years. And the counselor, and I was there for my kids, and I was trying to do the right thing, and I'm always trying to be you're trying to be the pillar. You're trying to be the thing that, your kids see you as iron, so to speak. And he told me, he said, people are, everybody deals with these things in different ways, but look at tough times, or look at stress and strain. Some people are a thimble, and they can't take much, and some people are a 50-gallon drum, and they can take a lot. He said, but no matter what you are, how big or small, all of them fill up and overflow. And he said, you're a 50-gallon drum, but you're full. He said, you need a vent. You need to talk to somebody. And the thing I would encourage anybody going through times like this is you're not weak for going to talk to somebody. A lot of people look, I shouldn't need somebody, and I shouldn't need a therapist, or I shouldn't need a counselor. Well, you got to do it. And the toughest thing is to say, I need help, and go see someone who will help you. That's what a real man does. And I can't sit around and be miserable myself. I have to get that vent off, because my kids rely on me daily to be the best I can possibly be. And I need that vent in order to be the best I can for them, not just for me. Going through, I guess, a little bit about me, what we're going to do in the show, and things that have led me into this. So going down the path here.
Talking about your mental health, and that stereotype out there that men can't cry, or that men don't get depressed, or that's the way you and I were raised. We're about the same genre, you know. We were raised that way, to believe that guys, just big boys, don't cry, and I think that has to change.
I just think that even if it's not like just outright crying, I think you got to have. When my wife was alive, she was my vent. And I don't trust a lot of people. I just kind of who I am. I'm very, you got to earn it. I mean, if you look at my circle of friends, it's 25 years, 30 years, 40 years. My friends, my very close group, I've been friends with for, years and years and years. So I don't trust easily. So, but you got to have that vent. And when we were together, when I was with my wife, she was my vent. I'd go to her and tell her anything, and she did the same thing for me. And if you don't have that, if you lose that spouse, or you lose that parent, or whoever that person is, and now you're dealing with the stress and strain of raising kids by yourself, of working every day, of the fact that they're gone, and the loss that you feel. And sometimes, you feel, could I have done more? Could I have prevented this? Could I have, what could I have done? So you're dealing with all that. You got to have somebody to go to and say, here's what on a daily basis runs through my head, and how do I deal with this? And what is a proactive and positive way to turn this into something that's good and not negative? And how can I take my message and what's going through my brain and make it a positive, and feed my kids nothing but good energy and positive energy? If you're full of negative energy and you're dealing with your kids every day, they're going to get negative energy.
Absolutely.
So you got to go and get that out in a way that's positive for you, and you have feedback and how to deal with it, and can you do this? Whatever does it for you. Maybe it's hitting a heavy bag. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's just having some time by yourself, or reading, or whatever it is that gets you, cleanses you, but you got to have that outlet, and you got to turn it into something positive, because that negative will flow through to your kids. So I just think that you got to have that. And guys that say, well, I'm not going to see somebody, what the hell do they know about me? They know a lot more about what's going on in your squash than you realize. I was shocked by that. He would say things to me that I was like, how do you know that? And, that's what they do. If I was talking to one of our main dudes here from Sparks Media, Tony Sparks, or on our way to the before we came to the studio here, and just you gotta take all this shit and find a way to kind of convert it into light the fire, but make it burn in a good way. And we deal with so much shit on a daily basis, whether it be in the media or in social media or just the daily, you got to have somebody to talk to about that. And you got to have somebody, you got to have that vent, and you got to turn that into something positive that drives you positively every day to do things, whether it be, like I said, professionally or through being a parent, or, and that's what we're looking to do, is kind of put that message out.
Yep. Bottom line, it's a choice. Every day you wake up, you have a choice. You can choose to be happy or unhappy.
Yep.
I say that all the time. Life is about the choices you make. So you've made some good choices, and you've had some tough decisions to make. And I think that's what's going to make you great in this podcast role.
I hope. I aspire to. Everything I do, I want to be the best. That's my goal. Always has been. I'm very competitive. I'm very. People ask me, my business has done very well, and we continue to, and I love it. I love every day. And they're like, why do you do it? And I said, I like to win. I like to, and win to me doesn't necessarily mean, a lot of people look at that as a paycheck, and it isn't about that. It's about competitive. Are we the best? Am I aspiring every day to be the best person I am? God gave me gifts. Am I using them? Am I giving my kids what they need? Am I giving the people around me what they need? Do I lead? Are you a leader? That's something that's huge to me. Am I a leader for my kids? Am I a leader for the people around me? And that's winning. When you go home at night and sit down and go, hey, I had a good day. Good day.
And even if you don't, to say, okay, today wasn't such a great day, but tomorrow, look at you. You're going to get back up. You're going to come back out swinging,
right?
Every single day. And that's not necessarily easy.
They call it the present because it's a gift.
Yep, absolutely. And so we're going to have a lot of gifts coming up for the folks to listen to in these podcasts coming up. So tell me a little bit about these first couple coming up, because we're talking about the Takedown Mafia. Some fun people here. Who are they?
These are buddies of mine that I'm on a text thread with. A few of them. One lives in North Carolina. The other ones all live in Nashville. All these guys are ex-wrestlers, ex-athletes, very successful professionally, all do very well, and they're in businesses or work for large companies and have been very successful. All are fathers. And I call them the Takedown Mafia because they're all ex-wrestlers. We all have been on a mat at one point in our life, either through jiu-jitsu or wrestling. And these guys, our text thread's fantastic. We help each other daily about, one guy just recently went through a divorce and he's got a son, and we tried to help him. And when Amy died, they really helped me. And these guys are there for me. My best friend in the world is on this text thread, Scott Shipman, and I'm godfather to his 3 kids. He's godfather to my 2. And these guys help me get, these are the vent that we're talking about. We talk about things, and we, this happened to me today. What would you do? I'm doing this. We have one guy that's a head wrestling coach at a Division I university, and he's like, guys, this happened to me in a room today. What can I do to help motivate these guys? And we're feeding each other. every day. We're feeding each other positive energy, and here's what to do, and here's how we. So these are these guys, and we're gonna have them on talking about this because these are crazy sons of bitches. These guys are all guys that have done some crazy shit, and we have great stories, and I just think it can help, hearing what they do every day. How do they approach their life and their family and their profession and their beliefs, and just gives, some guidance to others out there.
I think that's going to be great, but we're not going to stop there and talk about that. We are also talking about everyday issues, but a big one, sports, the participation trophy kind of deal. We have a pretty special guest on one of our podcasts.
We do. We have Rich Donnelly coming, and he's a local guy. Grew up in Steubenville, Ohio. I'm from Wheeling, West Virginia, of course, and Rich was a coach all around Major League Baseball. With the Pirates is where we recognize him from specifically, and Rich has had some tough times outside of, he's been an amazing, his professional career is wonderful, but he's had some tough times. He had a daughter pass and a son pass. And Rich has dealt with that in an amazingly positive way. And he's put out a great message for people on how to deal with that. You got a guy that's a leader and a coach. You got a guy that's a teacher. He's teaching people how to do certain things. And you got a guy that's dealt with adversity throughout his life. Toughest thing you can do is lose a child. And he's lost two.
I can't even imagine.
I can't either. And Rich has dealt with it with class and dignity, and his goal is to help others who are going through similar situations. So that's the kind of guy we want on this guy. Providing advice that I think is invaluable to people out there.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We can expect a lot more coming up. So it's going to be a great ride with you, Has. It's been exciting today getting the Who on Has.
I'm geeked. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it.
Yep. So I'm excited, and more to come. Thanks for listening the first time, and we got many more to happen. Thanks, KJ.
Anytime, Has.
That's a wrap on this episode of Bald, Bearded, and Bold, fueled by Sparks Media Agency and iHeart Studios. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to share it with a fellow dad. Got a dad win or struggle to share? Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Stay bold, stay bearded, and keep crushing fatherhood. Until next time.